Ladies and gentlemen, picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, unseen landscape, the path before you veiled in mist. You feel a quiet trembling within, a subtle invitation. You are not lost. You are on the verge of becoming someone greater than you have ever known. That trembling is your soul stirring. That mist is the threshold of your next and most powerful self-unfolding. There comes a moment in one's journey, not loud, not dramatic, but subtle, when something begins to shift beneath the surface. It does not announce itself with fanfare. Rather, it emerges in the quiet, in the spaces between thoughts, in the way familiar things no longer comfort as they once did. This quiet stirring within is not a sign of chaos, nor a symptom of weakness. It is a signal that the deeper self has begun to awaken, nudging the personality out of its habitual patterns and into the unknown. You may not recognize it at first. It may come as a vague dissatisfaction with things that used to bring joy, or a strange sense of distance from people, roles, or identities that once felt central to who you were. There is a shadow cast over the routine, and even pleasure begins to taste different. It's not depression, though it can wear that mask. It is not boredom, though it may be mistaken for it. It is a prelude, a psychic tension building toward transformation. What stirs inside is not new. It has always been there, waiting, but only now, through the gradual erosion of illusion and repetition, can it rise. It is the voice of the authentic self, long buried under the expectations of society, the conditioning of childhood, and the fear of standing alone. This inner stirring is the soul preparing for emergence, whispering truths that may at first feel uncomfortable, that the life you've built might not reflect the truth of who you are, that the success you chased might have been shaped by someone else's dream, that your strength lies not in control but in surrender. And as this awareness grows, so too does the resistance. The ego does not go quietly. It clings to the familiar, insists on certainty, bargains with comfort. Yet somewhere deeper, you already know there is no returning to who you were. The stirring within has altered the terrain. You are being summoned, not by the world, but by the essence of your own becoming. There is no clear path, no formula to follow. The terrain ahead is not mapped, because it is yours alone to walk. But this is not cause for despair. It is a sacred call. What once defined you, the masks, the labels, the performances, will no longer suffice. You begin to realize that identity is not static, that the self is not a destination, but a dialogue. And the first step in this dialogue is listening to the unease, the dreams, the longings that arise uninvited. Perhaps you wake with a heaviness that has no name, or you are drawn suddenly to old memories, childhood dreams, fleeting images that carry strange weight. These are not random. The psyche speaks in symbols, not explanations. It brings forward what consciousness is ready to integrate. That quiet within is not empty, it is fertile. It is the dark soil from which meaning grows. You may find yourself seeking solitude, not as an escape, but as a necessity. The noise of the world becomes too sharp, the expectations of others too heavy. In solitude, you begin to reclaim your own voice, to hear the rhythm of your own heart, to discern what belongs to you and what you inherited unconsciously. And this is where the real work begins. Not in the outer performance, but in the inner reconciliation between who you are and who you were told to be. There is pain in this process. No birth is without pain. But the suffering is not in vain. It is the fire that burns away falsehood. The stirring within is a flame, subtle but persistent, asking you to burn through your illusions, to step naked into the truth of your being. And with each step inward, a new clarity arises, not always comfortable, but undeniably real. This is how the best stage of life begins, not with grand gestures, but with the courage to listen to the softest voice inside, the one that says, "It is time, time to become, time to return, Time to live not according to the world's measure, but by the compass of your soul. And though the way forward may be unclear, the way inward is certain. Follow it, trust it. The quiet stirring is not an end, it is a beginning. There comes a stage in one's unfolding when the faces worn for so long begin to feel brittle. They do not break all at once, but they begin to crack. A smile that once shielded now trembles with falsity. The confident posture begins to feel hollow. The clever words feel rehearsed, like an actor repeating lines that no longer belong to the scene he's living. This is not a failure of strength or discipline, it is the quiet erosion of that which is no longer true. The masks once served a purpose, they were necessary. In childhood they helped to navigate the gaze of parents, the demands of teachers, the cruelty or expectations of peers. Later they helped gain entry into the world, into relationships, institutions, roles. They were crafted with care, the achiever, the helper, the rebel, the intellectual, the caretaker, but they were never the self. They were garments tailored to survive, not to reveal. Now something inside no longer wishes to pretend. The mask grows heavy. It has been worn so long that one forgets what the face beneath even looks like. But there are moments, fleeting, quiet, when a glimpse emerges, in solitude, in sorrow, in joy that cannot be faked, something raw and wordless, something true. This is the beginning of letting go, not in revolt, but in recognition. The persona has been mistaken for identity, but the soul is no longer content with surfaces. What once protected now imprisons, and though others may still praise the mask, may even beg you to keep wearing it, you can no longer do so without betrayal. Not of them, but of yourself. The letting go is not dramatic. There is no audience. It happens in the still moments, in the refusal to laugh at what no longer amuses, in the silence that replaces the need to impress, in the fatigue that creeps in after performing what no longer fits. It is not a rejection of the world, but a turning inward toward what is real, toward what was hidden beneath layers of adaptation. There is fear, of course. The mask offered safety. It was accepted, even rewarded. To drop it feels like risking abandonment. But what is the use of being loved for what you are not, of being seen, yet unseen? That is a deeper kind of loneliness, one that corrodes from within. To be truly known, one must first be willing to know oneself, naked, imperfect, unpolished. This act is not selfish, it is necessary, for when the false falls away, what remains is not emptiness, but essence. Not a vacuum, but a presence, and this presence draws to it what is real, relationships that see, work that aligns, moments that nourish. Life begins to reflect the self, not the performance, but there is mourning in this process. One must grieve the image so carefully built, the person others expected, the comfort of fitting in, even the power that sometimes came with the mask. Letting go means stepping into uncertainty. It means walking without costume into the world, unsure of how you will be received. Yet the cost of not doing so is far greater. To cling to the false self is to live a life that is not yours. It is to move through days that feel scripted, to speak words that echo but do not resound. Authenticity is not a luxury. It is the root of vitality. Without it the soul starves. The moment you begin to shed what no longer serves, the body breathes differently, the mind softens, the heart, long guarded, begins to open. There is space now for contradiction, for mystery, for becoming. You do not arrive fully formed. You unfold, layer by layer, into the shape that has always been waiting beneath, and what emerges is not perfect, but alive. Not fixed, but whole. It may be quiet at first, it may be awkward, but it is yours, entirely, and in that there is power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that radiates, a power that draws from the deepest well. To let go of the old mask is not to lose, but to return to that which was always present but hidden. It is the great unveiling, and though it may go unnoticed by the world, your soul knows, and it is enough. There are moments when the rhythm of life begins to shift in ways that defy logic. Events unfold with uncanny precision. A book finds its way into your hands just when you need it. A stranger utters a sentence that mirrors the thought echoing in your mind. A long-lost friend reappears without warning, holding the very piece of clarity you hadn't known you were seeking. These are not coincidences in the dismissive sense. They are threads woven from some deeper fabric of being, pulling you into alignment with something more real than the visible world. When you begin to step away from the false self, when the masks start falling and the inner stirring deepens, the world outside starts to move differently too. It's as though the hidden architecture of the soul starts revealing itself through outer events. Patterns rise from chaos. Encounters, once random, now pulse with significance. You feel the texture of meaning pressing against the surface of ordinary life. This phenomenon does not come from the rational mind. It is not planned, calculated, or forced. In fact, the more one tries to orchestrate it, the more it dissolves. It arises only when the ego loosens its grip, when the psyche is ready to perceive without controlling. Then, and only then, do the deeper currents begin to show themselves, not with spectacle, but with quiet precision, a glance, a phrase, an image, a dream, all bearing the weight of something more. These encounters are not always pleasant. Some arrive in the form of disruption, a job lost, a door closed, a plan unraveled, but even these moments, especially these, hold their place. They strip away the illusions that keep you from hearing the call beneath the noise. They make room. The psyche speaks through disruption as clearly as it does through joy. What matters is not the shape of the event, but the resonance it carries. Does it stir you? Does it leave a mark? Then it is not accidental. There is, at times, an eerie precision to it. A sudden invitation pulls you into a room you've never entered before, and there someone says exactly what you needed to hear. Or perhaps an inner question held in silence is answered in the lyrics of a passing song or in the dialogue of a film. The outer world in these moments becomes a mirror not of your desires but of your deeper readiness. It reflects not what you wish, but what you need. These are not passive signs. They are invitations to follow, to trust, to align action with intuition. The world is not merely happening to you, it is responding to you. It reveals itself to the degree that you are willing to look with eyes unclouded by fear, and when you do, the boundary between self and world softens. Life becomes dialogue. You are no longer an observer, but a participant in the unfolding mystery. To move with this current requires surrender, not the collapse of will, but the release of rigidity. You begin to act not from anxious planning, but from attunement. You listen, you respond, and somehow the path opens. Not without challenge, but with undeniable clarity. Each step confirms the last. The signs are subtle, but unmistakable to the soul that has learned how to see. Others may call it luck, intuition, chance. But you know, because you felt the shift, the encounter that changed your trajectory, the coincidence that pierced through your doubt. These moments accumulate, not in number, but in depth. They form a language older than words, a language the soul never forgets. In time, this way of being becomes natural. You stop chasing, you stop forcing. Instead, you begin to recognize the openings. You learn to wait, to feel, to discern. Not all doors are meant to be entered. Not all voices speak truth, but when the real ones come, you know, not because you can prove it, but because something deep within answers yes. These elective encounters are not random gifts. They are part of the architecture of becoming. They arrive when the self is ready. They belong to the best stage of your life, not as its cause, but as its companions. They are the soul's way of saying, you are on the path, keep walking, the world is listening. There arises a time, often without warning, when the presence of others begins to feel distant, not in the sense of dislike or contempt, but in a deeper, almost sacred necessity. The laughter of the crowd, once a source of pleasure, becomes an echo. The noise, the haste, the constant pull of the outer world, all begin to lose their grip. One does not withdraw out of sadness, nor escape, but is drawn inward by something far quieter, far more urgent. A longing, difficult to name, begins to take root, a longing for solitude, for stillness, for the unspeaking presence of one's own being. This shift is not a rejection of the world, but a turning toward the self. It begins with a subtle weariness toward the superficial. Small talk feels heavier than silence, obligations louder than purpose. One senses the falseness of routine interactions and craves the company of silence more than performance. And in that silence something ancient begins to stir. It is not dramatic, but it is real. In solitude the soul stretches. It breathes in the absence of distraction. What was numbed by noise begins to feel again. Emotions long buried rise like mist from the forest floor. Unresolved tensions surface, not to torment, but to be seen, and in that seeing, transformation begins. This is the slow and sacred work that cannot be done in the presence of others. It requires the clarity of one's own undivided attention. There may be discomfort at first. The habit of constant engagement is hard to unlearn. The mind searches for stimulation, for validation, for something to chase, but solitude is not a void, it is a vessel. And once that vessel is entered willingly, not as punishment but as invitation, it reveals its contents. Memories resurface, dreams return, fears lose their fangs, and amid all of it, the self adorned, unmasked, begins to speak. Reflection is not merely thinking, it is listening, not to ideas imposed from without, but to the inner voice, subtle and persistent, that has been speaking all along beneath the clutter. In the quiet, that voice grows clearer. It does not offer answers in straight lines. It offers symbols, feelings, moods. It speaks in patterns, in images, in fragments, and yet it speaks the truth. This pull towards solitude often arrives at a threshold. Something has ended or is in the process of unraveling. The old way of life no longer fits, but the new has not yet taken shape. It is a liminal space between identities, between stories, and only in the silence can one begin to hear the shape of what is to come. Only by turning away from what no longer nourishes can one discover what does. It is here that a deeper intimacy with the self is born, not the ego with its ambitions and performances, but the self that watches, endures, remembers. In solitude, one learns to sit with pain without numbing it, with joy without clutching it, with uncertainty without fleeing from it. The self matures in this space, it deepens, ripens, becomes real. The world may not understand this turning inward. It may call it isolation, detachment, even selfishness, but that is only because it fears what it cannot see. True solitude is not escape. It is confrontation, not of others, but of the inner architecture upon which life is built. And if one remains faithful to it, faithful to the silence, to the questions, to the patient unfolding, something shifts, a new foundation begins to emerge. One not built from shoulds and musts, but from authenticity. And when the time comes to return to the world, it is not as the same person who left. You return slower, more deliberate, less eager to prove. You speak less, but what you speak carries weight. You choose differently, not from fear or habit, but from a quiet certainty. This is the fruit of solitude, not perfection, but alignment. To be drawn towards solitude is to be summoned back to yourself, not as an idea or image, but as a living, unfolding mystery. It is a homecoming, not to the person you once were, but to the one who was always waiting beneath the noise. And in that return you do not lose the world, you find your place in it. For only the one who has met themselves in silence can truly meet another in truth. So if right now you feel discomfort, loss, confusion, you are not losing, you are becoming. You are standing at the dawn of your most powerful stage. Embrace the stirring, trust the signs, surrender the old self, and step into your purpose. Your most authentic self awaits.